the audience coming up with solutions. And I just thought I think it's such a beautiful film in that it looks so less at kind of all the problems and why we have all these problems with climate change, and just looking at, here's our situation, how can we move forward, and how can we work with with what we've been given to create a brighter future. So just thank you so much for your art. It was beautiful. And I'd love for each of you just to kind of give a quick introduction of yourselves, and also adding in kind of what inspired you to make this film in the way that you did.
Okay. I'm Nova Ami, and I first of all want to say I'm so honored to be here and grateful to be here, and the movement that we did leading into this discussion was really deep and moving for me. We also lead a workshop that we have in conjunction with the film. And so to go through all of the different emotions, to process those physically is really important for us. So thank you for that. When we first started talking about making this film, I guess it was about just over 5 years that we first started exploring this idea, and we were really reflecting on the theme of change and how we deal with change, how we respond to change, and how we move through change. And at the time, Typhoon Haiyan had just struck the Philippines. And for me, that was a very personal event, because I have a lot of family there. I'm half Filipino and have spent a lot of time in the Philippines. And so that really got us exploring, how these climate events change a person, change people, change humanity. And we spent a lot of time in nature exploring this theme, and it really, I guess, made it a priority for us to explore what we could do in a film together. I guess, Velko and I had worked together on a film before this one, Occupy Love. I was producer and he was director. And before that, we had each had our own path-making documentaries. So this is kind of where this is, Metamorphosis has really been, I guess, part of our trajectory as a creative team. And I guess, really important for us too, to explore, really to acknowledge where we're at, but also, like you said, to move through it and really explore what's next. What can we do? What are people doing? What are some of the creative solutions that are happening right now that we can be inspired by? And they're really meant to be, ideas that can spark our imaginations. We're not necessarily expecting people to build their own earthship, although, you can do that. And there are people doing that, but it's more the principles, the design principles and the ideas. And we really wanted to bring those to the forefront as a source of inspiration. I guess we can, talk more about that as we go on, but It's just a start.
Yeah. And so I'll introduce myself. I'm Velcro Ripper, and documentary has been my passion my whole life. I feel like the role of the documentary filmmaker is to help to capture, especially for our films, is to capture the zeitgeist of the times, and then reflect it back and help to catalyze the transformative potential of the situations humanity finds itself in as we move. And it feels like we've all been born into such a pinnacle moment and it's not an exaggeration, in the history of the human species on this planet. And it's a make or break it moment in history, actually. as we run into systems overshoot, because the whole humanity is overshooting the capability of the Earth to sustain life, to sustain us. So we're going to keep running into these wake-up calls. We just had the honor yesterday of interviewing Nemo Bassi for a new project we're doing called Alone Together, which is about this time that we're in right now, this pandemic time. And it's a global video diary from people all over the world contributing. And he calls this time the age of emergencies. So here we are, all of us, right now, facing firsthand a global emergency, and we're in it. We've always been, for a long time, in a global emergency called the climate crisis, but it's a long emergency. It's a slow emergency, and humans aren't that well equipped to things that are coming down the road. We're better equipped to things that are happening right now. So suddenly we're in a situation where we have to respond, and we are responding on a global level. And there's going to be lessons to be learned. There's going to be a lot of suffering. We know that we're already experiencing a lot of suffering. We're in a storm. One great quote I just heard is we're all in the same storm in many different boats. So we're all experiencing this in different ways. We have different struggles we're facing, but we're in this storm. And down the road, this storm and the climate crisis is going to start crossing paths too. We'll probably even see that this summer with the wildfire season coming upon North America, and what's going to happen when these things cross paths. So we really need to develop a strong regenerative culture, and we need to develop a strong culture of mutual aid. I think to weather these storms, we will do it in community. We won't do it, even though we're in isolation. That's why we call our new project Alone Together. Even though we're in isolation, we're also connected, and we have to maintain our sense of community. And so there's going to be lessons learned, and we're going to have a lot of challenges, but I think that humanity has a lot of resilience and a lot of ingenuity, and we're seeing creativity and compassion and people stepping up to the plate these days in wonderful ways. I'll just pause there because I can just keep talking, but that's some thoughts.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's really that cross section of the current situation we're going through in climate change that's so interesting to me right now, because we see that without all these cars on the roads and factories running and people kind of doing their normal, rat race, if you will, it's leading to clearer skies. And we're seeing the Himalayas now in India, and there's no smog in LA. And, it's like the climate and the earth are getting a little break because the humans are taking a break. And there was a theme in the film that I'd love to kind of explore through this context, and it's the theme of impermanence creating wonder. And I never really understood impermanence as something that can be beautiful in and of itself until I was at Burning Man last year, and there were these beautiful art exhibits, and then they just got burned at the end of the week. It's like, what are you building these for if they're just going to get burned? And thinking about where we're at now, the impermanence of what used to be normal and the lives we used to live, and the impermanence of the world that our ancestors used to have isn't the world that exists anymore when it comes to natural surroundings, and much of our coral dying and us losing trees, and just so many things changing. And so I'd love to hear from you kind of how you see the impermanence of things given this current situation of great uncertainty. What opportunities do you see that presenting to us?
Well, we have the opportunity to start over in a way, to imagine how we want to do things, and use our imaginations to really create the type of world that we want to live in. Because everything's kind of at a standstill right now, and we're getting a taste of what a new life could really feel like, and what parts of that do we want to keep? What parts of that do we want to continue doing? And just in terms of our pace of life, and and how we spend our time, and what we eat, where we get our food, how we get our food, how we move around. All these things are, the opportunities. It's an time of our opportunity right now, where we have the space to really ask ourselves, what is possible, and how can we make this possible?
Mm-hmm. And it's also a time where our hearts are going to get broken open, and it's a time for grieving, and that's part of it too. So we always have to hold. We have to have this ability to hold these two things at the same time. It's the crisis and the catharsis and the transformation, and we're going to be at different places along this journey, and we need to. And I think it's important to fully embrace where we're at as we go through it. In fact, there's a structure to the film that we devised that that's not. We actually at one point we had them with titles throughout the film, but it's also the structure of our workshop, and it begins with chrysalis, which is that going inward phase, like the cocoon phase. And in a way, we're all in this cocoon right now, right? We're in this cocoon. And then that chrysalis kind of we turn into mush in there, and our cells, actually, our imaginal cells reimagine themselves into something new. And when you come out of that chrysalis, the crisis is actually what moves us out of that chrysalis. And we have to go through this phase of catharsis. So that then the second phase in the film is the crisis phase. And then we move into the catharsis phase, which is the experiencing, the grieving, the understanding, and then ultimately the releasing, which moves us into, in our structure, the final phase is the symbiosis phase. Mm-hmm. And that's that place of regenerative culture and learning what it means to live in harmony with the earth and the systems that we're within. To come into a place of mutually enhancing relationships, so we're not constantly taking, but it's reciprocal. We're giving and taking. We need to do that with the land. We need to do that in our relationships. We need to do that so that everyone in those different boats is afloat. Whatever the vulnerable, we look after the vulnerable. We look after each other. And that's going to have to be a big part of the regeneration that happens. It's going to have to address the fact that I think a lot of people are saying, and this will quite likely happen, we're going to move into a real economic collapse, a Great Depression. That could very easily happen. So during times like that, we really need to come together, and I feel like these structures are evolving. We with Occupy Love, our previous film, we were looking at the global movements that were emerging around the world. And I feel like those movements and that whole phase of transformation that happened back in 2013 and it led to these movements around the world, from the Occupy movement to the Arab Spring, to the Indignados in Spain, the European Summer, to the Idle No More movement, to the climate justice movement. All these movements can be considered kind of like humanity's immune response to this planetary crisis. And I feel like these movements are actually maturing. They didn't go away. They mutated. They turned into different forms. And now is a time. Now we have things like Extinction Rebellion and wonderful indigenous climate action movements happening, and the Fridays for the Future movement, the youth rising. These are gonna need to continue and become part of our move away from fighting for change to becoming the change, and that's what might emerge out of this crisis and this collapse.
That's a beautiful transition, because I wanted to ask next, how have the two of you become the change? How did this film kind of change both of you in how you show up and in what you do to be stewards of this planet?
Well, it's we've gone through a lot of change in the past few years since we've been making this film, and one of the big changes is we've slowed down a lot. We used to I've lived in the city all my life, and up until a couple of years ago, we relocated to a small town in British Columbia. And so the pace is definitely slower. We're spending more time. We have a 5-year-old son, and we're really focused on our relationships and being in community. And we're starting to grow our own food as well, and really, I guess, also in terms of the type of work that we're doing and how we're doing it. The next project that we're working on right now. Part of it is due to circumstances. A big part of it is we're not leaving our homes to make this film, and that's a big change, right? And so we're looking at other ways of doing our work that are more sustainable. That's a big one.
Yeah. I feel like the everything that we've been doing has been leading up to this time in history, and I feel like we're really just doubling down on our dedication in trying to create art and documentaries and workshops and work that is of service. And I guess the need is just so great right now that we really need everyone. I feel like when people say, well, what can I do? I feel like if we can just find out what our gifts are, unwrap our gifts and let them shine and put them into service in what's needed right now. Find a way to take what gives you joy, what your real gift is, and put that into service. Then you're going to find the deepest meaning in your life, and you're needed. We need you. We need everyone. And so I feel like that calling, I really feel that calling strongly. And I think that slowing down is something that the planet is calling us to do. I think one of the things in the film that we talk about with Filka Sekulova, she was in Spain actually, and she talks about the idea of degrowth. And this is an unpopular idea on a national level. Oh, we should just stop consuming and being consumers. And no, corporations really don't want to hear you talking about that. No, let's find some big high tech thing. We're going to send sulfur dioxide into the air and stop climate change that way. But actually, what's needed is what we've always needed for both the planet and for our own well-being and our sense of meaning is to know we can do better than being consumers. We have there's a lot more to our life than being consumers, and we're not get out of that plugging into that whole system which is collapsing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like we can point our fingers at oil and plastic and these things all day, but it's our habits that are really kind of the bigger issue. I'd love to kind of open this up to the audience as well. Kevin, if you can please wrangle up someone in the audience here, would love to get some interaction going.
Hello, can you hear me, see me? Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Justin.
Hey, my name is Justin Obendorf, and I'm coming from Erie, Colorado. I want to let you know, first off, that film was excellent. Really moved me. I was really impressed, so thank you very much for that. I guess my question and comment is, we talk about, you presented wonder in such a wonderful way, and it was with children. And there's always this wonder, children have this sense of wonder, and they're curious about the world around them. And I think you captured that beautifully. My question is, why do you think that changes over the years? I'm a middle school teacher. I teach, that middle age, and I see it. I see kids from, they're really curious. They love learning because learning's fun, to something that you have to do, and it's this routine and stuff like that. And it's almost like, in my opinion, and I'm an educator, schools kind of suck the fun out of learning sometimes. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are, because you captured it beautifully. I mean, even with that school and the children and how they were, touching things and curious about things and stuff. So anyway, I thought I'd shoot that over to you.
Great question.
Yeah, we think a lot about wonder. And we're always on the lookout for it, for the presence of it. We
even have a film that we're developing called Wonder.
Yeah.
About wonder. That's how important we think it is.
Yeah, and
One of our projects.
you know, a big thing about wonder is really being present with what's around you, and seeing things for how they are, seeing the beauty in things. Slowing down is a big part of it, and just watching something grow, and really being curious. And I think also acknowledging the impermanence of things, and really appreciating what is there in that moment. I think wonder has a lot to do with that.
School is a big question. We're thinking our kid's about to go into school. He's been in preschool, and we've always been in sort of cooperative school situations where we're part of the process. So we're at a kind of a crossroads, because where we are, there isn't any alternative schools. We talk about starting our own.
Yeah. So yes, it's a big.
We don't want him
question.
to lose that wonder.
He's incredibly imaginative and curious and full of wonder, and that's we want to nurture that and keep that alive. It's a good question.
I mean, is it because education is something that has become too standardized? I know in the U.S. in particular, there's a big emphasis on all these tests, standardized tests, and schools get their funding based on how well their school does in the testing. So there's a lot of emphasis put on that sort of very linear, data-driven approach to learning, whereas creative learning is much more open-ended and doesn't necessarily fit into boxes. And I think when we try to box things too much, we lose the wonder. But wonder is also, and imagination is key to solving the problems that we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Hopkins has written a wonderful book called What If? And you should read that, because it really does it has a whole chapter on education and different models of education. And his premise in the book is that we need, one of the things that's declining along with species, along with all these other things, is our imagination. We're actually losing as a species, we're losing our imaginations. And so he feels that's critical. And I think we feel that's critical to the path that we're on, is to really support and spark our imaginations, because we need to think outside of the box.
Yeah, I love that. And right now seems like a better time than ever to open our imaginations, because there is uncertainty. And I think often there's kind of that anchor of, well, I can only imagine so much, and I'm in this box. But now it's like the whole world has been kind of cracked open in a way that allows for new channels of imagination to flow. Thank you. I think we have one more question from the audience.
Oh, I apologize. I cannot talk too loud because my kids are asleep. I wanted to thank you for your beautiful film. I really enjoyed it. And the question I had was connected to the culture of fears, the culture of fear that appears in situations of change, and especially emergency situations like this one. And you talked about this experience of our hearts being cracked open, and I think a lot of people are, reluctant to go through that grieving process. So there is a lot of inner resistance. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about possibilities to engage people in cultures that move away from the constriction of fear into something that is more creative and expanding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that fear, fear is an interesting thing, because I used to be actually very push fear away itself. But I once shot a film in Colombia about human rights activists working in a very, very dangerous situation. And one thing that they told me was that in in these situations, they don't push fear away, because fear actually has messages. So fear is there. It's a stage. And I think if you feel fear, that's also something that pushing it away or numbing it or pushing it down isn't the answer either. I think we need to accept that there are real good reasons to be afraid, and that a certain amount of fear is going to keep us alive. So there's that. But I think that it can turn into anxiety, it can turn into stress, and it needs to be moved through. I think, like all of these, we need to keep things moving and not let them get stuck within us, and hold on to them. I think that's where the beauty and the blessing and the comfort of radical impermanence is that this too shall pass, and this too shall change, and we will get somewhere else. But because of the nature of change, things are always changing. Things are always changing. Things are impermanent. So there's a lot of I guess we need teachers actually in this time. I think we need a lot of wisdom. One of the people that we're going to speak to soon for this new film is Roshi Joan Halifax, who is a great resource for understanding some of the hard things, like being with dying, which many of us are going to be around and experience in our lives and our loved ones. So we need to be, we're going to need some deep teachings around that. And our cultures aren't well set up. We're well set up to kind of skim the surface of things and avoid things. So we can't. Spiritual bypass is not a time for spiritual bypassing. But there's a tenderness, I think, that we can feel, and an intimacy that we can feel in this collective sorrow that we're going through right now too. And that tenderness is in the heart, and keeping our hearts open to that and reaching out to each other is really important. And then I think that we need to just respect where we're at right now too. Some people are going to be in the fear, they're going to be in the sadness, and you can't spiritual bypass to the next stage and say, let's get there right now. Just, you got to be where you are. A lot of people are feeling tired now too. That's part of this. There's a lot of weight up to a global pandemic. So I think we need to be open to that and respectful of what anyone is going through. But it's also really a time to connect. And when you have that strength and you can be that eye in the storm, and offer that calm to people, that can be really valuable for them too.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's what we're hoping to do with this, is help to provide that calm. And it's interesting you mentioned that, a lot of people are tired. I guess for the first month of this, I was sleeping more than really ever before, like over 8 hours, 9 hours most nights. It was wild.
You don't have a 5-year-old.
I do not. I have a very calm dog.
Yeah.
I think that concludes our time. I really, really appreciate you both taking time out of your evenings to join us at this virtual gathering. It really means so much to us and to this community that we're building around connecting through the beautiful art form of film, and through these interactive discussions that really helps us kind of seal and integrate what your film shows. And so thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Any parting words for us before you go?
Well, I want to just say that you can watch all our films free right now on our website, and transparentfilm.media. So there's a whole wealth of wisdom from many great teachers in those films. From Thich Nhat Hanh to Archbishop Desmond Tutu to really great teachers who can. I think there's much in there that would be of value beyond this film. So go back and look at some of the earlier films. At transparentfilm.media.
Yeah, and also, there's information about the project we're working on now called Alone Together, and we're looking for participants, people who want to self-document and create their own personal video diaries of this time.
Which then becomes part of the film.
Exactly, yeah. So if anyone's interested in knowing more about that, that's on our website as well.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Yeah, we'll definitely share your website, transparentfilm.media, and look forward to seeing more of your content, and hopefully some of our community will be involved as well. So thank you both again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes.